can too. We here at Riding High Sports at Riding High Podcast Studios. You know it's going down. Man, today it's going to be a great episode. You have no idea who I got in the building. I got USA Today, ESPN affiliate, Yannis, aka John Katrupis from the 361 in the house. How's it going, bro, man? Oh my god, bro. I've been waiting for this for a long time. This is something crazy for me. I'm so happy for the fans that are going to listen to this. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It's a pleasure to be on with you, man. Robert Wilson, All Stars for life, bro. You know, as soon as that invitation got thrown my way, I was down. Although, hey, I do want to say something, man. So I saw that you had Price Macon on, and when our boy reached out to us, and Derek reached out to me, I was like, "Oh, cool! Roberto's doing a story on like the best athletes in Corpus Christi history. Like, I'm excited to talk about myself." He's like, "Oh, we want to talk about your journalism career." I was like, "Ah, well, okay, that's cool. We can do that too. No problem."
No, dude, no, bro. You up there, bro. You up there. Like straight up, dog. Like don't get it twisted. Like we've had some greats on the show. We've had Tim Price. We've had
Yeah.
Price
Oh,
making.
monster. Yep.
Shout out to
Beast.
TJ because he's the greatest in high school sports around here. But bro, you done it on a different level. You've done it on a collegiate and a professional level. And what you have done, like I tell people all the time, like this man has talked to Phil Jackson. This man has been around the greats of the greats without paying for tickets. Like this man does his business. He knows his basketball. So I've always wanted you to be here. I've always wanted you to like. I've always like because like to pick your brain just from that angle. Because like as a fan, I do this for a podcast. I am not a journalist, people. All right, I went to school for business. I am not a journalist. I side rap, I side podcast, I side work, sell pizzas, I side sell cars. I do a lot of stuff, but I've never I'd never focus. And you, what you do is, man, it was just so like it was inspiring knowing that I knew somebody that I went to elementary with, that I went to middle school with, and he's out here riding for ESPN. He out here riding for USA Today. He covering the Spurs. He commentating on A&M Corpus Christi, men's and women's basketball. You are, dude. You're as legit as it can be when it comes to talking about anything basketball. I love basketball, and you know that. Like I'm a basketball player. You're a basketball player.
Play a
You
whole
went to
lot.
Ray High. You know I went to Carroll, but that's it. But like let's just jump into it, man. Giannis
Yeah.
Katrupis. First of all, where are you from? Where'd you go to school? Tell me your story.
Yeah, man. So, from Corpus Christi, born and raised, was there for the first 28 years of my life before my post journalism career took me to other cities and other states, and now back to Texas. And man, grew up loving the game. Eat, sleep, breathe basketball, and not just the games, man. I love the business of basketball. There's times where I enjoy the draft and free agency, or even
Mm-hmm.
summer league, just as much as I enjoy the playoffs. I mean, I really love all aspects of the game. So it was a real easy decision for me when I'm thinking about what I'm going to do with my life and what my dream job is, what I wanted to do. And I got to say, just ended up being really blessed with the opportunities that found me and that presented themselves to me. Had a really amazing 9 year career before I ended up calling it quits and going into the professional world and working a job that just I was able to make more money at. But man, yeah, just a diehard hoops fan, man, that had a magical career. And what really made it easy for me to step away when I did was I couldn't think of one thing that was left that I really wanted to accomplish. I mean, there was
Uh
times
huh.
where I was on the front pages of stories were on the front pages of newspaper, USA Today, newspapers, magazines. Um, Anyone from that 2000, let's call it 2006 to 2016 era, you can name drop just about anybody. I at least talked to them once in a group setting, if not in a private setting. So I was really blessed, man, to establish some immediate credibility in the pro level right out of college, and then that immediately trickled down to or in the NBA And that immediately trickled down to give me instant credibility in college and the G League, and even at the high school level as well, where I did some dabbling in there towards the later part of my career. Um, but yeah, man, I'm from a small town. We went to the same elementary school, same high school, and just goes to show, doesn't matter where you're at. In today's day and age, you can make a name for yourself and have an amazing career. It doesn't matter where you're from or where you're at.
No, and you're right about that, man. It's that's the crazy thing. So a lot of people don't know. So I grew up playing baseball. I was a baseball player. I was a catcher. I did all this, and it wasn't until, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, either we were in the third grade or fourth grade, and your mom came to pick up like four of us. It was like me, you, Michael Moodle. I can't remember the other person. I want to say it was Harry Samuels that was in the
It
mix.
probably was Harry. It probably
I
was
think I
Harry
think it was
Samuels.
Harry. I think it was Harry, and she took us to go see Space Jam, and
Man, and I
that
think
was,
I think she took us during school. I think we
yeah.
missed
She
school to go
she
see
she
it, if I'm
dragged us
not
out of
mistaken.
school to
Yeah,
take us to the 2 p.m. Space Jam because there was nobody in there but us in there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's like, I saw Michael Jordan, I saw the cartoons, and I saw like, man, a basketball player can transform into a movie star. And that's the first time I ever thought like an athlete can move from one level to another. Before that, it was like rappers, like you had like, Mark Wahlberg, and then go to be an actor, or Andre 3000 and go to be an actor. It was the first time I saw Michael Jordan in a movie, and he was a main star, and I was just like, man, that is so cool. That is so awesome. And I just fell in love with basketball at that young age. And I just kept playing basketball, playing basketball, playing basketball. And if it wasn't for your mom, shout out to Miss Katrupis out there. Shout
yeah.
out. Um, I don't think I would have been a basketball head. And I always gave props to you and your mom for that, because y'all are the ones that put me on it. And if I'm not mistaken, your name is Yannis Katrupis,
Uh-huh.
right? We've always called you John, right?
Yeah,
Because in elementary, ain't nobody saying Giannis.
yeah,
But
man. Yeah,
you're Greek, correct?
yes, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I am Greek, and let's just say, like, I wasn't like brilliant to growing up. I think my like intelligence kind of caught up at a later age. So I think my parents had some concern about me being able to spell Katrupis alone, and then being able to spell Giannis on top of it. So they're like, what can we do to help him out here? And so we went with John early on. It's actually the Greek translation for
Mm-hmm.
Giannis. So even sometimes I go to Greece to visit my dad's side of the family there, and they'll call me John there too. But it was when I made the decision actually to become a journalist that I was like, man, Giannis is my real name. That's going to catch on. There's probably way more Johns doing this than there are Giannis's, and so let me do that. And then I always kind of take a little bit of pride in, like, man, I was kind of the first Giannis. I was around in the
Mm-hmm.
game. I was in the NBA before Giannis came around with the Milwaukee Bucks now. Um, and so that was one of the reasons why I started to actually go by my birth name. But yeah, man, my mom and my dad always
Hold
real
on one
supportive.
second.
And
You're cutting
yeah,
in and out. Let me double check some.
double check it.
Like, I'm barely hearing him through mine. Can you hear him? Let me double check some real quick.
Go for it.
Okay, so it's just the headphones. Yeah, they just messing up bad. It's okay. Keep talking.
Yeah, so they were always real supportive, man. And yeah, that movie Space Jam was kind of a man, that movie created a culture, right? Like that movie was incredible. And what's funny is I watched it not that long ago, maybe like a year or two ago, and it was still awesome, man. I still felt like we were 7, 8 years old, man, watching it for the first time. What a great movie, man. But yeah, that created a lot of fans back in the day. I mean,
So
my mom
you
fights me to watch
started
that movie
off
four
as
times.
a kid in Corpus Christi. You went to Robert
Yep,
Wilson Elementary with me.
yep,
Afterwards, you went to Hamlin,
yep.
right? At
Yep.
Hamlin, you're there at Hamlin. Hold on, I got some new headphones now. Shout out
There
to
we go.
Gary.
There we go.
Shout out
Okay.
Gary.
Nice.
You're at Hamlin, and at Hamlin, did you start playing basketball? Did you play basketball at the school? What was up?
Yeah, man. Yeah, we played together. Yeah, we were there. We weren't that good in seventh grade, and then in eighth grade, man, we ended up being all right. We got a nice little transfer from St. James, rest in peace to White Mike. Ended up
Yeah,
joining us
shout
there
out
at
to White
Hamlin,
Mike.
and yeah, man, we ended up having a pretty good season there. Went to the city championship,
Winfield.
lost to Winsill. Still stings to this at 35 years
Shout out
old.
Jacoby
Still
Satterwhite.
hurts. Yeah,
Jacoby
still
Satterwhite is who
hurts
beat
real.
us.
No, it was Chewy and them
Yeah,
that
well,
beat it.
they were there, but like,
It was Chewy and Winseal.
yeah,
They beat us in the championship,
yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. And rest in peace to Chewy too, man.
Rest in
It's
peace to
sad that we
Chewy.
lost him. Um, but yeah, man. So stayed a big fan. And then that next year, right when we made that jump to high school, that was really when my eyes got open to the levels that there are to the game. You always think, hey, you see NBA players like, oh man, when I'm grown, I'll be able to play at that level. Then you start seeing people a grade or two above you that are just
Hmm.
leaps and bounds above you, and that's when I really started to think it's time to consider something other than playing basketball.
Yeah. No, yeah, because you went to Ray. I ended up
I went
going to
to Ray.
Carroll. I went to end up
Yep.
going to Carroll. We
Yep.
played a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went
At
to
least 10 or
elementary and middle
12.
school
Yep.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we was on the same team at the city championship. That's why we say rest in
Yep.
peace, Mike, White Mike.
Yep.
He was on it. He was on the team with us,
Yep.
and also rest in peace to Chewy. We put
Yep.
Chris Adamas. Rest in peace to Chris Adamas as well.
Oh man, I was gonna get
Bro,
there
like
too,
straight,
man.
like
Yeah.
like we can't forget him. Like shout out to
No.
Chris Adamas. Like straight up, like he was on the team with us.
Oh
He was
man.
also on the team with me and Carol as a
What a
freshman.
great guy too, man.
Great
That guy
guy,
was the
great dude.
heart and
Dude was
soul that made the bus rides fun, made
dude. He
practice
made
fun. That dude
everything
was
fun. Like he
awesome.
was just like he was just the most energetic comedian you can find in a room.
Oh,
After like he would just like he just always found the funny in something and made everything more positive. And it was like when we found out he passed away, it was a shame. It was very
oh, it's
sad.
heartbreaking,
It
man.
was very heartbreaking. But
Yeah.
rest in peace to them. Those are people we played with back in
Great,
the
great
day.
memories with them.
Yes, great, great. So all right, so you're at Ray, and you're graduating. What happens after graduation? I mean, okay, because it's true because you were there. So our freshman year, you're at Ray.
Yeah.
I'm at
It's
Carroll.
a good place to start. Yeah.
You're in witness, and you're in prime place to witness one of the pretty best or greatest teams that come out, out of Corpus Christi in general. You got Tyrann Mitchell, you got Alan Coleman out there. They were just heading to the state finals and the tournament. You got to see that, and then you got to see him play against Carroll at the time. They had like Joe Cuellar, and just Eric
Eric Staten
Staten.
was there. Yeah.
Eric Staten was there. The 6'8" guy everybody just talked about. Like
Flying
you saw,
around.
yeah,
Yep.
just flying around. They were both great teams. Ray always had the upper hand. It was always a great game, but they always ended up winning, if I'm not mistaken, by like 6 or 7 or 10. They found a way to win at the end, and no difference than when I was there my freshman year. It was Ray versus Carroll. The last play of the game, Ray was beating Carroll, and it was so bad. It wasn't so bad, but it was just they let Tyrann Mitchell walk past somebody. I think Joe Cuellar, and he threw an alley oop to himself. He bounced it at the end, caught
Threw
it,
it up.
dunked it
Put his hand around
at Carroll High School at a full house, standing people. Like they were selling tickets, and people were standing, and it was the wildest thing I've ever seen outside of an and one mixtape live,
Oh,
bro. It was the livest thing. Like my producers right now are going crazy. Like what? Like you don't get it. This fool threw an alley oop to himself. Bro, you were there. Bro. I was there too because I had I
yeah.
played the freshman JV game, so I stayed afterwards and I saw the varsity game, and it was the craziest thing I've ever seen outside of and one mixtape, and
Man,
it
let me
was
tell you what.
so live.
That team that went to state. I was on the bus after that, going back to Ray. My
Yeah.
mom was there. She's like, "You want to ride home there?" I was like, "There ain't no way. Like, I'm getting on that bus, man." It was electric on there,
I
man. No,
bet.
that team, my freshman year, that our varsity team that went to state, man, they were just incredible. But I got to tell you what, man, they were great. Allen was great. Sydney was great. Lamar Beasley was
Yeah, Lamar
fantastic.
Beasley, bro. That was little
Tyrann
flip. That was
Mitchell.
little flip.
Tyrann Mitchell was that guy, man.
Tyrann
Oh my
was.
goodness.
If
When the lights were on, he rose to the occasion and was the best player on the floor 99% of the games that I watched that year. I remember they had four starters fail during midterms or something like that for some
yeah,
reason.
yeah.
These dumb teachers at Ray didn't realize what was going on, and they're failing all these guys. And
Damn.
so and they
That's
still
crazy.
didn't lose a
So
game in
teachers
district.
didn't even know they were that good and they were trying to
No, they
fail
didn't.
them in
They
high
were
school?
failing Sydney in physics. Who cares? Who cares?
Sydney, they were
Yeah,
failing
he's
Sydney and them in
6'9".
physics and not even
Yeah,
knowing they're going to state.
yeah, he's 6'9". He went to Howard. Who cares what his grades are? Yeah, he can hoop.
How
That, yeah,
he ended up at Howard?
he played at Howard for at least a year after college,
That's
and
wild.
I want to talk more about Sydney because Sydney's a big reason why I ended up in
Yeah,
becoming
we're
a
gonna get there.
journalist.
I'm gonna make a note real quick. We're gonna get to
Yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah. Keep going
yeah.
though.
Actually, I'll transition there. So yeah, so I see this amazing level of basketball being played there, right, man? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they were just absolutely out of this world. But it really opened my eyes to how much work I got to put in and how hard it is to perform at that level and the levels that you can see. So my sophomore year, I catch a little bit of a growth spurt. I start hitting the weight room and I'm starting to reach a next level for me, and I get a call. Man, I want to say it's like Christmas Eve from Coach Odoms. Man, Coach Odoms calls
No,
me like on
for real?
Christmas Eve, and he
Autumn
goes,
hit you up
Giannis,
like
like
that?
he hit me up, but yeah, Christmas Eve, I'm on the JV team, and he hits a Giannis like, hey. Sydney can't go to this tournament. Like, we need you. You got to come.
Uh huh.
Sydney got busted for failing or something like that, so he couldn't go to this. It was a Waterburger tournament in Dallas, and we go to this and so I get bumped up to varsity just for this tournament in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget. So we're sitting there, we're in the locker room, the first game in this tournament, and Coach Oates looks at me and he goes, "Hey, Katrupas, I ain't gonna play you, man. I don't want you to go out there and piss yourself. All right, you're just here just in case something goes horribly wrong." And I'm just like, in my mind, I was like, "What do you mean piss myself?" And then we're like halfway into the first game there, and I'm like, oh man, I can feel the pee like starting to slip down my leg a little bit, man.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
oh
yeah.
my God.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's two guys that I saw there, man. Two guys. One of them, his name was Jeremy Smith. He was the starting power forward at Dunbar, and I swear to God, one of the best players I've ever seen in my life, even including
Mm-hmm.
all of my pro experience. Like this guy was out of this world. He ended up going to
Yeah.
Georgia Tech. He busted a kneecap and had a unimpressive overseas career. I say unimpressive. He saw the career overseas,
Yeah,
but
he was an
I mean, this
ACC guy.
guy, yeah, man, this guy really was like God on the basketball floor. He threw a no look alley oop from half court under his arm in a live game in a packed stadium, and I was just like, what is this, man? Like this is too much. And then there was another guy who ended up going pro, Sean Williams. He went to Boston College. Lengthy guy went to Mansfield High School. Lengthy guy went to Boston College. Maybe set an ACC record at the time for freshmen with blocks in the game. But this
Mm-hmm.
guy was 6'11". He was blocking everything. I saw him have 15
Man.
blocks in high school, and I was like, man, it's time for me to figure out something other than playing basketball. And so, yeah, that tournament right there. After that, I want to say I went home and I started a sports blog, and
Yeah.
just wrote a couple articles every here or there throughout high school. And before I knew it, man, some big opportunities started to find me.
That's what's up, man. So what you're there in high school, you get
Yep,
inspired, you start writing
yep,
these blogs.
yep.
When's that first call? Is it before high school's over? Right after high school? What's going on?
I want to say, man, it was probably the summer of my junior year, man. It was at the time where AOL was hot, and there was an AOL sports blog show, and I was doing a blog on a platform on AOL, and they brought me on a couple times, and they gave me like a sports blogger of the week award, and then they gave me a sports blogger of the month award. And then from there, some other not like big mainstream sites, but some
Mm-hmm.
network sites were like reaching out to me. At the time, I was just primarily blogging about the Lakers, and I'll never forget, man. There was this one publication. I don't even remember what it was, but they ranked like the top three bloggers for the Lakers on the internet at the time. And I had actually two of the three sites were mine, and the third site had asked me to contribute to them. So it was like I was on every single one of them, and it was shortly after that, man, that I was like, man, I shouldn't just be covering the Lakers here. I think I got a bigger platform where I can do more. And that
Mm-hmm.
got me a job with hoopsworld.com my freshman year in my freshman year in college. Actually, man, doing the sports blogging thing, it got my whole college paid for, man. Unfortunately, I
That's so
wasn't making great
awesome.
decisions at the time, so I ended up fumbling like an internship that I had my sophomore year. But it was amazing the opportunities that it presented to myself. But it got me into A&M Corpus Christi, got me in the athletics department, got me in at ESPN, and then I started to pursue work more than the school work, and went down that path. But yeah, man, it was like 6 degrees of separation, man. Just one thing just connected me to another, and before I know it, man, I'm getting my first paid writing gig, and it wasn't much, but all of a sudden, you know what I'm saying? I'm getting a paycheck coming in the mail for writing, and I'm starting to create a voice for myself, and then I get a phone
Mm-hmm.
call. I'm on this website that it's just big enough to offer money. It's not a big time website. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
like, it's a household name or anything like that. But we get bought by the USA Today. USA Today is they were at a time where they were trying to compete with ESPN on a sports platform level. And yeah, all of a sudden we get bought by ESPN. So you know how you hear these pro players talk about, oh, you got these bums right in their basement, their mom's house, their mom's basement. Talking.
Yeah.
That was me. I was at my.
I know that was
There's not
me.
basements and there's not Texas. There's not basements too
No,
much in Texas.
we
I
don't
was
got
in the
basements in
basement,
Texas.
but I was at my parents' house writing one day, and just an opinionated blog, and then all of a sudden, I'm in arenas talking to players, talking to coaches, talking to executives, talking to agents. I mean, it just changed. It changed my whole career overnight.
Yeah.
Instant credibility, that there's no way I could have had from just a personal blog perspective,
So
and it was crazy.
so what was your first paid gig and what did you write on?
Man, I first came on, and it was kind of like you do one for us and one for you, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
write one thing that we asked you to write about, and so I think I wrote about like top college prospects or something like that. They were really lacking from an NBA draft standpoint. They were really lacking. I want to say this is probably right around the Michael Beasley, Kevin Durant
Okay.
era, right around there. So I did a lot about that, and then I would do probably a weekly Spurs column or two based off of interviews and audio that I acquired from covering the Spurs.
So from there, because this is what got you, like you said, propelled to pay for your college to go to A&M Corpus Christi. Shout out the Islanders
Yep,
and
Harvard of the South.
right, it's the Harvard of the South. How at A&M Corpus Christi did you start right? Did you start covering? Is that how you started covering the Islanders boys and girls? How did that come about?
Yeah, man. So I had, based off of my job at A&M Corpus, I got a job at ESPN. I started to do a lot of radio shows, a lot of talk shows, and the girls gig came open. They had a guy. I want to say his name was Matthew Hicks. He was the voice of the Hooks for a while, or he
Okay.
started to become the voice of the Hooks, and it was just too demanding for him. So the women's job came open, and I was like, hey, I would love to do it. And so I ended up doing their play-by-play that season. They actually went deep into not the WNIT, but I think it's like the CIT, the College Insider
Mm-hmm.
Tournament, I
Mm-hmm.
believe is what it was called. We got to the
Yeah.
semifinals of that. We had a really good run. And then I do that for a year, maybe two. Then I go to A&M Kingsville for a year, and I do their men and women. While I was attempting to get a graduate degree, that didn't go so hot. Recurring theme for me at school, especially as an adult,
Yeah. Yeah.
school is,
Yeah.
is
It
just a
happens.
little tough, right? Yeah, yeah, it takes a little longer. But then the men's gig opened up for A&M Corpus Christi, and that had always been my dream job. I was there my freshman year at A&M Corpus Christi was the year that Tyrann Mitchell, going back to him, led the Islanders to the NCAA tournament where, whew, came close to beating Wisconsin
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. It
Man,
did.
came real,
And just a
real
shout out.
close.
And if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Tyrann Mitchell is the first Corpus Christi high school player to get a full scholarship to A&M Corpus Christi for basketball. Him
Yeah,
and I don't remember her name, but I know her sister Blakely Fowler. It was
Brittany Fowler. Yeah,
Brittany Fowler. Brittany
yep.
Fowler and Tyrann Mitchell were the first two Corpus Christians to get a basketball scholarship at A&M Corpus Christi. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm pretty positive you're not wrong there. Yeah, and so A Tyrann, I mean, just a constant winner, man. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, and then Cameron Teague was on that team that went to the
Yes, he
tournament
was.
too,
Yeah, he was.
from Ray High School. He was on that
Mm-hmm.
team as well. And man, what a magical run that was. So of course, I was always a diehard Islander fan, and so to be able to do the men's team, and men's team went through a little bit of a lull, after Tyrann and them left. Ronnie Arrow went back to South Alabama. And then they undergo a full rebuilding project. But then I caught on right when they started to come back up, that John Jordan era, that Rashawn Thomas era.
Mm-hmm.
Man, what a fun group of guys to watch, man. And I got to travel around with them, call all their games. Again, we made a run in that college insider tournament there as well. We got to the championship game one year, came up a little bit short, but man, just some high level basketball and some really fun times. And it was cool, man, to travel with the team, especially a college team, man, and to
Yeah.
see just how much of a grind it is. I mean, goodness gracious, those kids are working 16, 17 hours, man. I mean, there's no joke. You go
Yeah.
from
They work.
call and back to practice and shoot around and watch video and lifting weights. I mean, it's a grind, man. It is a
It
grind.
really is. It really is. Um, and that's crazy because like man, it's just nuts knowing that we got to see like them players before they made it to that level, and they just
Yeah,
did better when they got to the collegiate level, and how they
yeah, man.
progressed and grew.
It was really fun to see, especially to see Tyrann, man. What he did for Ray High School to put us on the map
Mm-hmm.
like that, and the career that he had, and it's just only fitting for him to be the guy that helps lead. He was a starting point guard on that team, hit the shot in the Southland Conference tournament against
Yeah, he
Northwestern
did.
State to seal the conference tournament victory and send them to the tournament, man. So yeah, what a fun time in Corpus Christi basketball. And then, man, staying on top of like local people. There late in my career, I covered that West Oso team that ended up winning the championship too, man. So yeah,
What?
I did some. I was doing some freelancing for the Caller Times, man. They had that lefty Robinson, and then Willie Harper,
Yeah,
the little
Willie
point
Harper.
guard,
Okay.
man. Yeah, man. The little point guard was sick too.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was.
man. That got to cover them, man. So I was there, had a front row seat to some of the best times in Corpus Christi basketball history,
Man,
man. It was
that's
awesome.
awesome because us basketball heads, like it's just crazy knowing that these people we saw like in high school and stuff like that, and just witnessing them and letting them grow, and then seeing them on another level. It's just sick.
Especially because when people don't think of when people think of the beach when they think of Corpus
Mm-hmm.
Christi, they're not thinking elite basketball town or
Mm-mm.
high level basketball is played there, man. But no, it does happen, and A&M Corpus Christi just won a couple of back-to-back Southland Conference championships. Unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
the I think the transfer portal has like really damaged their ability to be long sustain at that mid major level. You have a great team, you got young
Yeah.
talent. They're gonna go to some high major afterwards. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really hurt them in that aspect, but they benefited from it some as well. But yeah, man, I saw some great basketball being played there.
So how do you go from college to covering the NBA?
Yeah, man, what's that? I went more from covering the NBA to covering college, and and,
Okay.
and because at the especially there for A&M Corpus Christi, it just was instant credibility for me when I went to apply for the job. Like, look, I cover the NBA. These are the
Mm-hmm.
columns I do. These are the shows that I do. So it made it real easy for me to make that transition. And I'm traveling around with the team. I'm in cities that have NBA teams. I can go catch a game while I'm on the road with them. It's easy for me to sit in my room and get work done. So it was the busiest time of my career during that stretch. And then the off season was always way busier than the regular season. To be honest with you, just with you go from the playoffs to the draft to free agency to summer league. I mean, it's just boom,
Mm-hmm.
boom, boom, really. And then in August and September, there were some of the best. There were some of the best high school basketball being played on the pro on the pro circuit. Like Nike and Adidas were putting on big tournaments, man, and
Yeah, yeah.
during that. So I would go right through that and go right into Adidas Nations
Mm-hmm.
out there in LA, and got to see a young dominant Jalil Okafor at the time,
Whew.
man. I mean, I thought he was going to be the next best great big man. Unfortunately, came to the league probably about 10 years too late. And I'll never
Mm-hmm.
forget, it's probably the last year of my career. I'm covering this. We're covering Jalil Okafor at Adidas Nations. Um, and he's got Justice Winslow on his team. who is dominant,
Mm-hmm.
tough lefty. Then Stanley Robinson is on the other wing, and that's all everybody can talk about is these three guys. There's a lefty point guard on the team that I'm like, man, this guy's got it made. He's got the easiest job in the world. He's got three dominant guys to feed it to.
Mm-hmm.
Little do I know that lefty point guard's De'Aaron Fox ends up being the best player of all four of them, and never would have guessed it at the time. He was lean, he was lengthy, wasn't a
Yeah.
great shooter,
He had the
but
crazy hair
boy,
back then.
nah, it wasn't that crazy. What wasn't that crazy, man? Yeah,
Yeah.
man, and he ends up being the best of the group,
Mm-hmm.
man. So, talent evaluation was so difficult. You never know what a player can become, but
That's true.
yeah, man, he ended up being the best of the group. And there's no way you could have convinced me that Jalil wasn't going to be the best. I mean, he was just so dominant and so skilled. But man, the game just progressed past his position right as soon as he
Yeah.
joined the
Yeah.
league,
Because he was
basically.
a Duke, right?
Yeah, he was a Duke and he was a big
Mm-hmm.
man, and
He
he was
was. He was there
smooth
for
with
Coach
it,
K,
man.
and he had some
Yeah,
players around him too, but they were just like you
yeah,
said. It just
man. The
happens.
the game just evolved to where those low post big men just are a little obsolete, man. If you can't put the ball on the floor, stretch the floor, and guard on the perimeter, there's just not a home for you in the NBA
Yeah,
anymore.
it's no different than I would say nowadays how we look at running backs in the NFL.
Yeah,
Y-
yeah,
you know.
man. There's things that were essential to title teams in the past are now obsolete and not
Mm-hmm.
even really that important anymore. It's crazy.
All right, so let's stick to your NBA career for a
Yeah,
little bit. You used to cover
yeah,
the Spurs.
yeah. I did.
How
I
long
did.
did you cover the Spurs for?
My whole career there with Hoops World and the USA Today. I mean, that was my primary market. That was the team that I covered the most. And um, I'll be honest with you, man. It's you hear a lot of talk. I don't know how much your listeners are familiar with the reputation that the Spurs have, but I mean, a real media second organization, I think, is the best way that I could put. I mean, if they could
Mm-hmm.
go without coverage, without letting the media in the door, they would do it. I mean, they just did not want the attention. And man, Greg Popovich was a nightmare to interview. I mean, an absolute night. You can spend all night thinking of a great question, the way that you're going to phrase it, how you're going to come off sharp,
Mm-hmm.
professional. Like, I understand the game of basketball. And he would just shit on the question. I mean, and enjoy it in the process, man. I mean, you're in a
Yeah.
group there with 10, 15 of your peers. Some of them are recording for a TV station, so it's going to make its rounds. You're just soul just it just crumbles right there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just awful, man. But you know what's funny? I can never get a. You would get. I would say one out of every 10 questions you would get a good answer for, and then the other nine were just humiliating. And then I
Mm-hmm.
remember I'm in Las Vegas and I bump into him and I'm with my boss. And he stops and he shakes my hand and he asks me how I'm doing. Says, "Good to see." Like treats me so nice. And I'm just like, dude, I would rather you ignore me interview when the recorder is on, man. But like that. That's just
That's just
that
who he is.
realizes the organization, and so yeah, man. It was a tough for a young guy with such little experience. What a tough situation for me, man. I mean, there was times where you just get grilled for trying to talk to a player during open media time. I mean, like this is literally the time that the league sets for players to be accessible, and their public relations teams would come in, like you were. Like I was asking them about Epstein Island or something. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah. They protecting the players even though it's time given
yeah,
for the
man,
media.
going real overboard about it. It was really a tough team to
It's
cover.
like baby
I
mama
will
coming
say
up. They was just like block.
Y- Yeah, man. I will say Tim was always a great interview. You just had to
Mm-hmm.
wait for an hour after a game for him. But if you waited
Okay,
for him, he was a pretty solid interview. Manu was the absolute best in that locker room. But the
that's
thing
what's
was,
up.
because Manu was the best, everybody wanted to talk to him. Everyone's tired of getting creamed by Pop, so they're waiting for Manu to come out and give good answers. And then also Manu was a Spanish speaker, so you
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of outlets that's the only thing that they speak, and so they're all waiting there. So he was just you could barely get a couple questions in for him. But Pop was rough, man. He was really rough. Um, but Tony Parker was the worst. I mean, goodness gracious,
Really,
I've never
he was the
I've never met a
worst.
more whispering man in my life. I mean, like he just
He is
intentionally talked.
French.
Yeah, I mean, like literally, his volume was always at one. He's always a little smug, always a little, kind of like a little jerk. They listed him at 6 foot. He was 5'9", and I want to point that out just because I hold a lot of animosity towards him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, man, I mean, you had to have your microphone basically on your lips on his lips in order to be able to translate what he said, and I really knew he was doing it intentionally. So yeah, that he was my least favorite in that locker room by far, man.
Okay, so from there, let's go from there. What is the worst interview you ever got from any NBA player?
Oh, it's got to be Tony, man.
Tony
And
Parker.
I don't even have a specific answer of when. I mean, Tony, anytime. Yeah, I just didn't. I didn't really.
They said you
I
should
didn't
have
really
cracked over the
enjoy.
what? You should have crapped open the jack like Cat Williams. The
Oh
jack.
man, yeah. No, and it's funny. I watch the all the Smoke podcast with Steven Jackson, and he's
Uh huh.
constantly just trashing Tony Parker, right? And I'm just like,
Yeah.
dude, thank you. Finally somebody points it out. But yeah, no, man, he was right. And then Pop was just brutal, man. I
Yeah.
mean, just no prisoners. Doesn't matter how good the question is. Sometimes he would, he would be like a joking bully with you, and then sometimes
Mm-hmm.
he would just be downright mean. It was always kind of like a we would just sit there, most reporters just trembling before the pregame interview, like, how bad is this going to be? And then if they get beat, forget it. He's going to be in the worst mood you can ever imagine.
Yeah.
Even if they win, he's still very likely going to be in a bad mood after that. I mean, like that's just
That's how it was.
how the guy was wired.
So, from the worst, who was your best interview?
Um, Man, I will tell you, I covered the combine for 5, 6 straight years, and so at the combine, that's before guys get tired of the media process, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of second round guys, a lot of guys that were that were really gracious with their time. Um, I formed a really great relationship though with Brandon Jennings, especially
Really?
coming out of overseas. Yeah, Brandon Jennings was one that I had some really great interviews with. But then primetime guys, Chris Bosh was always really gracious with his time. Pau Gasol, extremely gracious with his time as well. Um, those two guys in particular really jump out to me as mainstream guys. But yeah, man, Brandon Jennings, especially because I really had such respect for being 18 years old and going overseas and going knowing how tough that is, because I had talked to players who told me how tough it is,
Mm-hmm.
to play overseas, and they were grown men after 4 years in college. So for him to do it right out of high school, um, it was a really it was something that hadn't happened at the time. That he was the first to do it. He was the first mainstream high school prospect to bypass college and go to overseas. So we really formed a nice bond. So those guys immediately come to mind as being some of the best interviews for sure.
Man, because I was a big fan of Brandon Jennings. I was a big fan of him
Yeah.
coming out of high school. I
Yep.
thought he was going to go straight, but I thought he did the smartest thing to go play pro for a year and then come to the NBA because believe at the time, if I'm not mistaken, I think what he had a kid or he had a couple kids on the way, and that was his
I
main.
don't remember. Yeah, I don't, he definitely
Yeah, yeah.
Stardom found him real early in life, and then for some reason he was ineligible for stuff that I'm sure he'd be eligible for now. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he took money from someone or something, or maybe it was grades or something like that. Again, who cares? This guy is
Well,
majoring in basketball.
I want to say I saw an interview where he said like I could take care of my family a lot quicker playing overseas for 1 year than going to the NBA.
Yeah, and he could focus on what is going to make him money. I always thought it was ridiculous that these big time
Oh,
prospects have to waste their time
oh,
they have
so
to waste their time in class.
I'm being told right now. It's because he couldn't go straight. It's when they got done with high school straight to the NBA. So instead
Yeah,
of going to
yeah, no,
college, yeah, he
yeah, he
went.
had it.
He went. That's
He was going to
why.
go to Arizona
Yeah, he
going to
was
go
gonna
to
go there.
Arizona
Yeah,
for a year.
that's right. But he decided
Yeah,
to go overseas and get paid and then come
yeah,
back.
yeah, and smart move. And now you see a
Yeah,
lot of guys going
very
to the
smart.
G League or the overtime
Mm-hmm.
league, and yeah, no, I think it's a waste of time for these high profile prospects to be in study hall. It makes no sense.
Okay,
I don't
so
need to be worried about history.
I want to ask this because I know you're a Lakers fan.
Yeah,
How was it? And a lot of these people don't know. You had the chance to interview Phil Jackson.
yeah, yeah.
Tell me about that
Phil,
process.
Kobe,
Phil and
all
Oh, I
the
didn't know
the
you did
stat,
Kobe. I didn't know you did
yeah, yeah.
Kobe.
Yeah, Phil,
Bro, but
Kobe.
talk about it all.
Yeah,
Talk about it all, because I know you're
yeah,
a huge Lakers fan, and so it was hard for like you. I know you covered the Spurs, but I know you're a huge Lakers fan, a huge Lakers fan. So tell me about it.
yeah, man. It was really a dream come true. I'll be honest with you. So the Kobe Bryant, any Kobe Bryant interview at the time is a large scrum. So I'm
Yeah.
in there with 20, 30 other reporters.
Uh
It's
huh.
still awesome. It's cool. You get a question in or two, and Kobe was always, very eloquent with his words. So that was cool. But at that point in time, I had interviewed Tim Duncan so many times, and I had interviewed LeBron and
Wait, wait, wait,
Dwayne
wait, wait,
Wade,
wait. Hold on,
Kevin
hold on, hold on,
Durant.
hold on, hold on, hold on. I gotta stop you there. You said you interviewed LeBron.
Oh, from 2006 to 2016, any big name player that you could name, I definitely talked to him at least once. And if not in a very close setting, then maybe like a group setting with 10 or 15 of us.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, I talked to all the big time players, so that kind of like starstruckness, I had already lost.
Yeah.
So it was really cool, but it wasn't something where I was starstruck or anything like that. Phil
Mm-hmm.
Jackson had me starstruck, man,
Yeah.
and it was a little bit more of an intimate setting. There was only maybe like 5 or 7 of us there talking to him, but he just had a presence about him, man. He's 6'9", which a lot of people I don't think realize. He had a pimp
He's
walk at
tall.
the time because he had back problems.
Uh huh.
Um, and he was just so he just had such precision with everything that he was saying, and he was just it was clear that he was a different level thinker. He was a high level basketball savant, man, and so
Mm-hmm.
that really that was probably the most starstruck that I ever in my career, man. When I talked to Phil Jackson, just the presence that he had, man. It was unlike anything that I saw with anybody else. And that's that, I talked to a lot of big time coaches, a lot of your perennial winners there. Rick Carlisle was
Yeah.
a guy that I
Dallas.
talked to a lot. Larry Bird was kind of similar. I will say Larry Bird had a similar presence. He had already transitioned
Larry
into a
Bird,
front
bro.
office role. Yeah, man, dude. And Larry Bird told one of the funniest lines I've ever heard, bro.
So tell me, what
Um,
do you say? What do you say?
yeah, man. So we're at the NBA draft and or we're at maybe summer league. I think it's Orlando Summer League.
Uh
And
huh.
somebody's asking him about Danny Ainge's ability to rebuild the Boston Celtics. And he goes, I have complete and utter confidence in Danny Ainge, except for when the game is on the line and he has the ball in his hands. And
Damn.
yeah, took a shot at his old teammate. But yeah, man.
That sounds like a Larry Bird line.
Yeah, man. My favorite Larry Bird line. That and man, don't I don't sign teammates at LeBron James because those guys aren't any good without him.
Oh,
Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah, man. He was
that's
yeah,
crazy. That's great. So what?
yeah.
Yeah. So we gonna start getting into this. That's nuts. Because I knew about Phil Jackson. I didn't know about LeBron and them. I do
Yeah,
remember
no,
one
all
time
the
you were
big name
telling
guys.
me. I remember you were telling me when you before Phil Jackson came into the room, the people there were so specific where his water was, where it needs to be,
Oh,
everything needed to be
yeah.
played right. Didn't you say something like that?
Yeah, man. No. There was no messing around with Phil and really the Lakers as a whole at that time. I mean, this is during the back-to-back run where they won titles against Boston and Orlando. I mean, that this is Showtime 2.0, or this is the top tier Laker period, man. So
Mm-hmm.
it was um, it was a real it was a real scene, man. It was a real well orchestrated circus at the time for sure.
That's what's up. So did okay all these interviews you ever did, all the
Yeah.
stuff the people you get to make. Have you ever got into it with a player or a coach?
So from a coach perspective, I wouldn't say got into it. I mean, you get embarrassed by Popovich enough, and he starts to be a little bit sour towards him. But overall, you knew that was just his mo, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
can't think of any particularly bad instances with any coaches. There was a couple times where I went to interview coaches, particularly during the Las Vegas Summer League. I was an interview shark. If I could catch somebody there,
Yeah.
hanging around watching the gamers, I would go up and try to
Mm-hmm.
talk to them, and I would get in trouble for talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, there was one instance. It may have been the second or the last year of my career, the second last year of my career. So Kobe Bryant is coming off of his Achilles injury.
Mm-hmm.
and he hangs 40 points on the Rockets, and the Lakers get the win.
Yeah.
And so the story of the night is Kobe dropping for, I think it was the first 40-point game he had after tearing his Achilles. And that's the story of the night. And so I go up to Trevor Ariza, a teammate of Kobe Bryant's, who we won
Mm-hmm.
championships with,
Yeah. Play for the
and I go,
Rockets.
Trevor, you know Kobe as well as anybody. How close do you think he looked to peak form? Trevor took that. I don't, to me, I still to this day, I think it's a pretty darn, it's not
Good
a
question.
horrible question. It's certainly not. I'm not trying to combat him or punk him or anything. He took it
Mm-hmm.
real offensively, and he tells me, he goes, well, what do you think? And I was like, well, I didn't play with him. I'm not a former teammate of his, so I just feel like you would know better. And then I turn, and I've got little 5'9" Patrick Beverly, fresh from the Ukraine, like in my face, like, hey, bro, you need to watch how you're talking. And I'm like, whoa, 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 like you need to. And so it's all like this big ordeal. I barely notice it because it's only because I look down to see him. But yeah, he's just,
Like how you say
like
you have to
trying to
look down because you tall. You are tall.
yeah, well, and
You're
a lot of
tall.
these, yeah, if you see an NBA player listed at 6 foot tall, he's 5'9". The same thing with Tony Parker, same thing with Patrick Beverly. I mean, they're giving them those extra 3 inches that they don't deserve in my mind.
Because
But
you're
yeah,
what? How
man,
tall
and
are you,
so it's
John?
6'3",
You're 6. Yeah, you're
six
tall,
three.
bro. You're tall.
Yeah, and not in that locker room, not so much, but yeah, when you put me next to those two guys for sure. So yeah. So Patrick Beverly is like mad dogging me in front of like all these other people. And I'm just like, what is going on here? And then like the PR people come in, like, okay, guys, that's enough. And so I reach out to the PR people after I can't reach out to Trevor. I don't know him like that, but I reach
Mm-hmm.
out to the PR people and I'm like, hey, like that's not I don't know what that evolved into is not what I meant for it to. And they were like, look, it was like Trevor specifically asked us to apologize to you for him. Like we get it now that it was a good question, but things get tense in the heat of the moment
Mm-hmm.
after a
Mm-hmm.
tough loss. And so yeah, that was probably the worst situation that I ever had with a couple of players.
That's crazy. That's crazy. That's
Yeah,
crazy because
man.
like
Yeah.
because Pat Bev is so like he's so aggressive on the podcast.
And it's funny because this is before Pat Beverly had really carved out a role for himself, and so like it
Mm-hmm.
really was like foreshadowing to who he was going to become. He became that
Uh-huh.
kind of that dog in the locker room
Yeah.
that was always angry and that was always looking to stand up for his teammates. So I respect him for that. But at the time, I was a little bit salty. It's like, look, dude, I saw you in Greece get buckets. No namers giving you buckets, and you're trying to punk me in front of a bunch of people for no reason. Like I had some ill will towards Patrick Beverly for a long time for that.
Man, that's crazy. That's crazy. So from there, let's say with the players, you've
Yep.
that was your worst encounter with a player. What's the best encounter? Or do you ever get to hang out with any of these NBA players outside of work?
Yeah. So my best encounter, man, I'll never forget. What I really started to do late in my career is I would give a lot of love and a lot of support to people that I knew were connected to bigger players. So
Mm-hmm.
Elijah Millsap, for instance,
Okay.
he was trying to make a spot for himself in the league, so we would give him a lot of coverage. Ended up becoming pretty good, having a pretty good relationship with Paul. And then, ironically enough, I sold Paul's wife some earrings for him later in life in my post
That's
journalism
dope.
career.
That's dope.
Yeah, yeah. But man, I'll never. I did an interview with Carl Landry one time, and you got to be a big hoops head to know
Yeah, yeah,
Carl
yeah.
Landry's
Carl
game. It's
Landry.
been a while since he's been in the league. I actually still have his number in my phone. I would never use it. I'm not going to call him right now, but
No, don't.
I did an interview with him, and it ended up on the front page of Hoops Hype. And the next day, he pulled me aside. And he's like, "Hey, man, like that was a really good interview." And we sat and we talked afterwards. And he had played A&M Corpus Christi in college when he was at Purdue, and we formed a real good relationship. I would always show his brother, who was in the league for a little bit, I think, or may got a couple 10 days or a G League deal or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was always that was probably one of the coolest things. But then the one thing that I'll always remember, man, and I wish I would have had it on video because I did a video interview with Yannis from the Bucks, and I go, "Hey, man, what's up? Like, my name's Giannis." He goes, "Oh yeah, you're that Greek guy." And I was like, "Yeah, man, what's up?" So
Yeah,
that
you
was,
are.
yeah, man, that was one of the cooler moments for me. And then so you talk about hanging out with players, man. So there's a couple of like media rules that you just don't break.
Mm-hmm.
You don't ask for autographs. You don't ask for pictures. You don't outly root for anybody. And then you don't party with players. But I did have an opportunity one time in it was in Orlando. It's a summer league,
Mm-hmm.
and a group of players from an agency that we were very close with, because a big part of being creating connections in this industry was getting close with agents. Um, and so there was this time where a group of guys were going to a nightclub in Orlando, and I even remember thinking to myself, like, "Man, you're not supposed to do this, but when are you going to have an opportunity in your life to
Yeah, yeah,
do
yeah.
this?" So I went out with Orlando, and I don't remember a lot of the guys that were there. I remember one guy being there, and this was one of the guys that was the nicest to me in my career. Nolan Smith, national champion from Duke, on the Duke
Yeah.
coaching staff now. I'll never forget, man. He always gave me great interviews. I always, gave him a lot of love. So he was always very, very nice to me. And we were in the nightclub, and I was like, "Hey, man, I'm gonna tell everybody that I'm John Shire, and I need you to go along with it, please." And he's like, "Dude, do it." You know what I'm saying? So yeah, yeah, man. It was, and now it's funny. It's ironic that he's on John Shire's staff for Duke. But yeah, man,
Yeah.
that was cool. But then the coolest story that I have, man. So it's Houston All Star Weekend. I don't remember, maybe 2015. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But
Mm-hmm.
I drive from Corpus to the to cover Houston All Star Weekend. I'm driving from home, and for some reason, dude, I leave my suitcase at home. All my clothes, I leave at home. And for some dumb reason, I don't realize until I get back or I get to Houston. So I go to Walmart and I buy a bunch of clothes. I mean, at the time, I'm making a journalist money. I don't have a lot of money. So I go to
Mm-hmm.
Walmart to buy a bunch of clothes. I'm going to return when I get back to Corpus Christi. And we're in line to go to a all-star weekend party at night. And I'm sitting there and I'm in Walmart clothes. I mean, my confidence is at zero, right? I'm just like, I look like crap. And then Dennis Scott is walking to the in the back of the club, walking towards the back of the club with Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith to a Kenny Smith party. My boss knows Dennis Scott, and he hollers at Dennis like, "Hey, Dennis!" And Dennis is like, "Come on, come on." So I end up going to like the biggest Kenny Smith's party, which is like one of the biggest parties of All Star Weekend that everybody talks about.
What?
I end up sneaking into this party with Kenny Smith, with Charles Barkley, with Dennis Scott, in this Walmart outfit. I mean, it was awesome, dude. Walked
Dude,
in
that's
there. I mean,
alive.
yeah, yeah, it was awesome. I end up, yeah, man. I end up, yeah, talking to girls I never would have talked to because, yeah, it doesn't matter what I'm wearing. I came in with Charles, and they're like, "How do you know them?" And I'm like, "Honestly, I don't, but I'm gonna act like I do, man." I mean, it was just awesome. I couldn't believe what was happening, man.
That's so
I
cool.
could not believe it. Yeah, man, that was definitely one of the coolest nights. I'm a big Shaquille O'Neal fan too, and
Yeah,
like
you
I'm
are. You're
walking past
Lakers.
Jack that night, and he reaches his hand out to shake his hand because I'm thinking to myself like, don't be that guy, you know what I'm saying? But he reaches out and shakes my hand and says hello to me, and I was like, oh man, like I could call it quits here, and I would have,
That's
fulfilled
so
every dream I
live.
ever had. Yeah, man, it
That's
was
so
awesome.
cool, man.
Yeah, yeah, man, it was awesome.
So I have a question for you. We
Yeah,
might have to travel a little bit back,
yeah,
but I heard something, and I want to make sure it's true. You were there in the San Antonio Finals when the AC went out at the game. Is that right?
yeah, man, I was there.
Talk
Yeah,
talk
I
about
think
talk about that because a lot of people talk about when the Spurs and they were playing, they were in the finals. The AC went out. The other team was talking about like that's why we lost. Talk about that.
Yeah, man. So okay, so one, I'm up in the nosebleeds, and I feel like we kind of got hit first. Because there's thousands of media members there to cover that game. So I'm up there in the stands, and man, I remember thinking to myself, man, it's like midway through the first quarter, and I'm like, dude, it's kind of hot, man. And then like in the second quarter, I'm like, I gotta like reevaluate my physical condition because I'm just like I'm burning sweat right now.
Uh
Like
huh.
I don't know what's going on. But then I start looking around me and I'm like, hey, like, do you feel weird? Like, does it? And they're like, nah, something's wrong. And then it's really in the second half where you can see that it starts to affect the game. That's where LeBron had leg cramps
Yeah. Yeah.
in that game. It's like it was notorious that the leg cramp game.
Mm-hmm.
And I will I will say I know he caught a lot of flack for it, and again, I'm not like a high performance, high level athlete. Um, it was hot in there, dude. It was hot. All right, yeah,
Yeah.
man. I cannot imagine playing 40 plus minutes against the best team in the league. And then cramps. What can you do to cramps? Happen. They happen, and they're
Mm-hmm.
debilitating. Yeah. So that was never. He caught so much flack, and people were really talking down on him for it. Uh, that was a rough environment, man. That
Yeah.
rough. That was a rough environment, and it took away a little bit from his kind of like his superhero status to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like okay, that's the guy's kryptonite. If you can get away with turning the AC off, that gives you a good chance of slowing him down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, that was a nasty environment,
Do
man.
you think that was? Do you think that's something that was similar, or the tactic that was taking the same place when the Boston Celtics had LA over, and supposedly they did the same to the
Oh,
Lakers,
yeah, it's notorious, right? Yeah.
right?
Oh, there ain't no doubt about it. Yeah, Bill. Yeah, man. This is a Lakers fan to me talking. Yeah, the Celtics were a bunch of cheating punks, man. Anything they could do. The hotel alarms going off at night at
I mean,
four
I
in the
mean, it's
morning.
it's
Yeah,
it's yeah, right. Like I just
yeah.
want
No,
to. I'm
man.
just asking you as on a professional level
That's
because
not rumor.
that's how I
That's
see it as a
yeah,
a basketball head.
yeah.
So
I don't think that there was any ill intent. I think that was
nah.
legitimately just a
Okay,
worst case scenario. Yeah, no, I
gotcha.
don't. I don't. Boston was intentional, but do I think that was intentional from the Spurs?
No,
No, I don't. Although they were, playing in San Antonio, you're accustomed to playing in that heat, man. Yeah,
true.
so
Very true. Very
they
true.
they they handled it. They handled it well for sure. But yeah, no, it was nasty in there. I remember doing. I don't think it's on YouTube anymore, but I did a video interview right afterwards, and
Mm-hmm.
I look like I'm fresh out of a rave tripping on Molly. I mean, I'm just drenched in sweat. I mean, it was rough in there, man.
Yeah, I can imagine, man. I don't do well in the heat. Uh, I sweat a lot, so I can't
Yeah,
even imagine
yeah,
being in a situation like that. But that's
yeah.
crazy
No,
because
man, that was
I,
yeah,
I I did hear about that. I wanted to ask you about that.
yeah. No, it
That
was hot.
that's
It was
it
hot.
was hot. It was hot. It was hot. Do you have Is there any particular instance or memory that you have during your career in this time that is just it just holds key to your heart?
Man. Okay, this is super random, and it's nothing to do with the game. But I remember Dan Fagan is a big time agent, and if
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm not incorrect in saying this, but I believe he passed away. But my boss was really good friends with him, and he invited us to go to the agency that he was running at the time. And I don't remember. I think he was really close friends um with Adam Sandler. So I think it's called like Happy Sports or something like
Yeah,
that. He
yeah.
managed a bunch of big time guys. He managed Dwight Howard.
Mm-hmm.
This is the summer where Dwight Howard is uh coming off of his season with his first stint with the Lakers, and he's going into free agency, and his free agency is the biggest story in the league that time. And so Dan invites us to his agency, and I'm in line for food. There's like food there. It's like, hey, go hit the buffet. And I'm in line, and this is going to sound a little bad, but I'm in line. There's this woman in front of me that is like the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life, and she has a name tag hanging from her belt. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, this woman has to be famous. Like, let me just see who this. It was Miss Venezuela who was in front of me. Yeah, and then so that gives you an idea of some like the star power in there, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
so Dan's like, "Hey man, like let's go upstairs and let's go on the rooftop and have a drink." So we're in Beverly Hills, right? We're in prime Beverly Hills, and then I'm sitting there on a rooftop having a drink with Dan Fagan, basically telling me that Dwight Howard is not going back to the Lakers. He's going to the Rockets. You can't run it, but that's what he's doing. You can't run it. Like you run it, you end up
Mm-hmm.
swimming with the fishes, so you can't run. But then a young superstar, John Wall, comes up and is just hanging out with us. And so I'm sitting on the rooftop with Dan Fagan, getting the news story of the summer broken to me, weeks before it comes out. This is
Uh-huh.
before free agency
This is
starts,
wild.
before anything had become official. And then John Wall comes up and is hanging out with us, and he's talking to Dan about, I think he's helping him recruit a top guy or something. John Wall was every young player's favorite player at the time. But yeah, so I'm sitting up there and I'm in Beverly Hills, and I'm just like, what? I got a flight to Corpus Christi in like 36 hours. I'm like, what is going on, man? I mean, just unbelievable. Yeah, I'm having in my mind, I'm having lunch with Miss Venezuela, and then I'm hanging out with John Wall afterwards, getting the scoop on the biggest story of the summer, even though we couldn't run it.
Man, that is crazy. How is it like, did you have to keep that into yourself, knowing that if you broke this, this could make your career?
Yeah, man. I'm glad that we got into this because that summer really opened my eyes to the nastiness of journalism, man. I mean, there's just so much. This is at the peak time. So right now in journalism,
Mm-hmm.
there's two newsbreakers. There's Shams and there's Woj. No one
Mm-hmm.
else breaks anything. At this time, Sam Amick was breaking a lot of things. Chris Haynes was breaking a lot of things. Chris still does. Sam still does to an extent, right? But it was more of a race, right? This is
Yeah.
before Woj had truly lapped everybody. And so we had the great in with Dwight. We were in with Dwight's his personal manager, his agent, even Dwight. And and everyone the talk was loud that he was going to the Rockets. It was really really loud, but no one could believe that. And this is before Kobe tear. No, it may not have been before the Achilles tear, but no one leaves the Lakers at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Kobe's there. It's the Lakers, so it was just like, yeah, that's what everybody's saying, but no one leaves the Lakers, so that's maybe not going to happen. And so news gets out that or Sam Amick is able to, and a great friend of mine, a great mentor. I love Sam. He breaks the story that for the USA Today, but for he works for the USA Today. I work for a property owned by the USA Today, so a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
little different. Seems the
Mm-hmm.
same, but yeah. He breaks the news. He comes out and reports it with independent sources. Dwight Howard is going to the Rockets. Then but for whatever reason at the time, and I think it was because Dan Fagan and Dwight Howard hadn't told the Lakers themselves, they didn't want the story out there. So they reach out to my colleague, Alex Kennedy, and they say, hey, man, this isn't right. That's not true. We haven't made that decision yet. Basically like squash this story. So Alex does what he's supposed to do. And he puts it out there, hey, this isn't final yet. Dwight hasn't made a decision. Like the Lakers are going to get one last chance to persuade him to stay. It
Mm-hmm.
was this nasty thing. I think, eventually it led to the USA Today basically shutting down our website. I think it's the biggest reason why they did,
Yeah.
honestly, this whole tiff. Um, and because then hours later, Alex and everybody else has to come out and say, no, Dwight is going to. But, there was that 4 hour period
Mm-hmm.
where my website and my team were contradicting somebody on the bigger team with USA Today. And it was just it was a real mess. And it kind of took away from one of the biggest breaks of Sam's career. I mean, it was just and we were such good friends. All of
Mm-hmm.
us were good friends, and so it really opened my eyes to the dirtiness of news breaking and kind of what goes into that, man. It was an awkward summer for sure.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, man, it was crazy, but I talk about now that race is almost over, right? I don't think it's like
Mm-hmm.
that too much anymore because two guys dominate the news breaking scene, right? Woj and Shams break everything, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about those two guys. So Woj, man, an article came out years ago talking about how he destroys careers and how he tries to hold people back. I gotta say, man, he was like a OG, you know, kind of like the head of the mob, looking out for the young guys. In my experience with him, man, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he was awesome. He would go out of his way to talk to me at every game, and then he would even drop nuggets. He'd be like, "Man, yeah, I heard this is going on," and trusting me that I wouldn't repeat anything
Yeah.
that he was saying. But he was what a fantastic human being he was, man. I had nothing but great interactions with him. And then Shams, man, I got to tell you, probably the biggest regret that I have from my career. I have this young, annoying kid in my Facebook messages all day, dude. I mean, just won't stop with the
Mm-hmm.
dumb, with the
Yeah.
questions were good to start, but then afterwards, you know what I'm saying? You ask so many questions, it's just annoying. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
of
saying?
course,
It's
of
like,
course.
dude, my girlfriend doesn't message me this much. Like, this is overkill. This kid just won't stop. And kids like, can you read this article I wrote? And and I read the article and it's horrible. It's very poorly written. It's written by a 17-year-old in Chicago. It's not any good. And he's like, and this kid's begging me, like, can you please give me a shot? Can you please give me an opportunity to your website? I'm like, dude, no, like, I can't do it. Yeah, that kid turns out to be Shams Charanaria. Yeah, the
What?
biggest newsbreaker in the game. Yeah, man. Yeah, turns out to be Shams. And it happens like that, dude. So he goes from this kid that's bugging me and other NBA writers to nauseum to all of a sudden he breaks some story about a player signing in summer league after the NBA draft. A lot of players that go undrafted, they sign with the team for who they're going to play with summer league, and sometimes there's some decent big names, guys that were good in college or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
He breaks that, and you're like, oh, like that's kind of a good scoop. Like I've never been able to get that kind of scoop. Then all of a sudden, it's a coaching hire. You're like, whoa, like that's not easy to get. Like you got to be
Mm-hmm.
deep you got to have some good sources to break a coaching hire. Then it's big time free agents. Then it's big time trades. And all of a sudden, me and the guys that I'm running this website with, we're like, whoa, we fumbled that one, but we couldn't have seen it coming. But
Mm-hmm.
almost overnight, he becomes the premier newsbreaker along with Woj in the NBA, and he still is to this day. And it just blows my mind, and I'm so proud of him. And he's become a really great writer. But from a news breaking standpoint, I mean, he owns the game along with Woj, and it's just really crazy to see. But I sometimes I sit back and wonder, had we given him that shot that he was begging for,
Mm-hmm.
where's our website today, right? Are we not still around,
Yeah.
man? Are we not all riding on that gravy train? I mean, but man, super happy for the kid. I mean, he wanted it bad. He wanted that life and that job bad, and he figured it out. And he's self made. I mean, the agents made him, but he turned himself into somebody the agents wanted to deal with. Now that front offices want to deal with, and now players want to deal with. I mean, it was just absolutely mind blowing to me. His career, man, it did not see it coming, but boy, I wish I did.
Man, that's crazy. That's nuts how like it just sometimes it happens like that.
Some he figured it out, and but the thing is that we all knew it. The agents
Mm-hmm.
have the info, the front offices want the info, and if you can get that circle of communication going, you can get some pretty good stuff. But to be able to be first to everything, that takes a level that takes high level guys to trust you and talk to you and communicate with you and continuously feed you that that big time people, all these people that worked for newspapers that are defunct now,
Mm-hmm.
they can't do that. They were never able to do that. This kid working for working for freelance blogs for the Chicago Tribune, never getting a dollar from him. Now he's a millionaire.
Yeah.
The Chicago Tribune may not even be publishing anymore. I don't know. I mean, like all these people that passed on him or that looked past him. I mean, he exploded on him, man. It was absolutely nuts. But a nice kid too. And I don't know if part of it, I don't know if part of it's like, hey, like just wants to remind me that how far back our friendship goes. But I think it was up until last year. He used to message me on my birthday every year, and I used to be like, dude, you did it, bro. Like you did it,
That's awesome.
man. It's like, and he even broke that Trump had COVID. I mean, yeah, this guy is a premier newsbreaker, man.
That's so
Unbelievable.
wild. That's so wild. It's
Yeah,
crazy
man,
how
just crazy.
somebody think that I mean just that hunger in them, you know? And I mean that hunger is always going
That dude had a dream, and he turned that dream into reality, man.
they say hard work always outshines talent. So you just got
Yeah,
to
no
grind
doubt
it.
about it, man. Yeah, he
Man, this
did
is
it.
crazy, bro. This has been an awesome interview. It's been amazing, dude. It's been nuts. I got a couple last questions before we get out of here.
Sure, let's do it.
When did you end your journalist career?
Oh man, I want to say 2000, maybe midway through 2016, or maybe yeah, I want to say midway through 2000 or 2015. That 2015 2016 year was my last in the game. I thought about going just purely NBA draft after that, but some things in my life changed, and
Mm-hmm.
journalism was really becoming a who will do it cheaper industry. And at 26, 27, 28 years old, I was like, I'm trying to make money, like
Yeah.
making 30, like covering the NBA sounds cool, but when you're grossing 32, $33,000 a year, you can't live a life off of that. You can't have a family off of that. You can't be a provider off of that. And so I started to realize that this dream just wasn't financially fruitful. And then I started to see opportunities just continue to dwindle down. I mean, if you look at it today, how many newspapers aren't around anymore? How many
Mm-hmm.
websites aren't around anymore? I mean, the amount of true high paying gigs, or high paying gigs covering basketball, you can probably count them on your two hands. There's just not
Yeah.
many of them. And I wasn't down to work for free anymore.
Um. That. Yeah. I can definitely say that's true. Like at a certain point, you got to know what's best for you, what's best for your future, and everything. I'm glad you saw it because to this day, man, you're very successful. You're doing great. I'm very proud of you, man. Just to see you
Thank you, man.
come from where we came from and being in elementary, man, growing up and things you've gotten to do, dog. It's man, it's an honor to say, like, man, I've known that fool since elementary. Like, I went
Yeah,
to grade
man.
school with him. Like,
Thank
you
you.
you did some really cool stuff. Just in case if anybody ever wants to get a hold of you and ask you some basketball knowledge or how to get into journalism, where can they reach you?
Yeah, man. So you can. I've shared the links. You've tagged me on the links on here. Do it like Shams did. Reach out to me on Facebook, man. I'm always here.
Perfect, man. Well, man, we're about to get out of here. It's your boy Ken too. Yannis Katroupis, aka John Katroupis. Thank you for being here, man. It was a privilege.
Thanks,
This
man.
is probably one of the best interviews I've done. Thank you so much. This is Ridin High Sports. If I can, you can too. And we out.